Hello and welcome to another episode of Mysteries with a History, where I'll take you on a wild ride into the unknown, the strange, and the mysterious. Like you, I have questions, and like you, I want answers. I want to say hi to everyone in the live chat today. Jonacide, how you doing? Stefan, Zero Cool, good to see you. We got Larry, too much information. Blessing. Zenza Bill, one of the best moderators out there, along with Creepy Little Book. I interviewed him last Friday. If you have not caught that interview, make sure to head over there because he drops some fascinating information. I always learn something from him. Amazing. We got William, how you doing? And NP, good to see you, my friend. Thank you so much for the super sticker. Today is going to be a really awesome day. And the topic, ooh, I'm excited. But before we get too excited, I got to bring in my extra special co-host, Mr. Jimmy Church from Fade to Black. Hey, Jimmy.
How you doing?
Oh my goodness. I'm not going to lie to you. I was shaking during the intro and I'm thinking I didn't even have coffee this morning. And then as soon as everything is like, now that we're here, I stopped shaking and I'm thinking, what the heck? What just happened to the body?
I am doing a mocha.
Ooh, like what kind of flavor mocha?
I have no. It's Fade to Black blend with Trader Joe's hot chocolate,
Ooh, that's
and
Trader.
I got to tell you, and then some organic sweet creamer in there too as well. So it's a recipe.
I mean, mixing coffee and hot chocolate does sound like a very interesting combo.
It's cold here. It's cold here. It's it's the winter blend. Halloween's coming up. What are you going to be for Halloween? Oh, you haven't thought about it yet.
What are you going to be for Halloween?
I have a top hat. Now, see, this is the deal. Halloween night, we're launching Unex Network.
Heck yes.
That you've let the cat out. You've leaked the stuff, and it's wonderful. I'm glad you did. It was great to see. But anyway, that you are a part of. So Halloween night, we're going to be launching Unex, and I'm also giving away candy. So, and I've got a couple of friends coming over to the house too as well. So, I've got a top hat, I've got a scarf, and I think I'm just going to do. I have some vampire teeth, and that's as far as I'm going to go. I'm not doing a party. I'm just giving away. The last time I dressed up, I scared all the kids. I scared them. I mean, I had one of those things from Italy, the long beak with the eyes.
From the plague?
Yeah. So I one of those, and it was black with these gold swirls on it, really cool looking. And I put that thing on, and every kid that came, right, freaked out, and I had to take it off, man. I mean, you're watching the moms, you're scaring the kids, and I was like, oh man. So I got to go a little bit lighter hearted. So I've got a top hat and a scarf. I'll wear some vampire teeth, throw some blood on my face, and I'm good to go. I don't want to do Elvis again this year. I'm Elvis every year. So
Halloween's by far one of the best holidays of the year. I mean,
the
one of
best.
my favorites. And for years upon years, I would always make my Halloween costumes with my dad from scratch. And like, it's just so memorable. We used to, before we get started with the show today, we used to like hit the houses as fast as we could to get as much candy as possible.
Right?
And it was like all to the T. Like we had to leave at the house at a certain time and we wouldn't leave until we hit our target. Jason 22, thank you so much. It says I got motivated to do my first super chat. Also, I can donate to the Cristina Gomez warm winter socks fund.
Very cool. Thank you for that, Jason.
Thank you. I am wearing two socks today and there are no holes in this one. They're actually tie-dyed, which is fun. But let's talk about the topic and why the people are here today, what they want to hear. And that is the Maury incident. Do you want me to tell the brief
Yeah,
overview or
yeah.
do you
Let's
want to do it?
go. Well, we've got to keep a tradition going. Let's get the Cristina Gomez straight down the middle, black and white, no opinions, no personal thoughts, background.
Well, I always got to
Let's do
ask, you
that.
know?
If I went first, it would just be this. You
All right.
center me. You center me, Christina. Okay, what was Maury Island? What happened?
All right. Here is the overview. And this story has a lot of pieces to it, as most of them do, but this one in particular. So, like I said, it's a very brief overview, and we'll be covering it in depth throughout the episode. So, in June of 1947, off the coast of Maury Island in South Puget Sound, a man by the name of Harold Dahl was out on a boat with his son, Christopher, their dog, and two hired ship workers. Harold and his son collected logs floating in the sound and resold them to lumber mills. According to Mr. Dahl, on June 21st at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, six unidentified flying objects appeared in the sky above his boat, and they were donut shaped. One of the saucers began wobbling as if it was having trouble. And then an explosion occurred in the middle of it because, again, it's a donut shape. So in the middle, it seemed kind of empty, maybe, and it spewed out a kind of hot molten metal substance, and it started to rain down from the sky, landing in the water and on the boat, causing a hissing or sizzling sound, killing the family dog along with breaking the arm of Harold's son. Harold tells his superior captain and about the incident, and the very next day, a man in a suit knocks on his door and asks Harold to tell the whole story and that he's not able to tell anyone else or bad things will happen to him. And it turns out bad things did end up happening to him because he spoke out about the story for quite some time. A little while after, some military officials came in to collect the debris that Harold had collected, along with the ones that were dumped by the UFO, and they placed it in a box and carried it to a B-52 bomber. This plane had 4 men, but then the plane crashes soon after it's in the air. 2 of the pilots died, while 2 other men escaped with parachutes, making this story truly a mystery with a history.
There you go. Now, a couple of one main point. It wasn't a B-52. It was a B-25. The B-52 wasn't in. Was much later, but yes, it was a B-25, and that crashed. So this is without a doubt one of my favorite UFO incidents, and for a lot of different reasons. One, you have the eyewitnesses, the two, we'll call them fishermen on Puget Sound. 2, we've got debris and crash retrieval items. 3, we have deaths. Two pilots died. And then to top it all off in this story, first off, it happened 3 or 4 days before Kenneth Arnold's sighting, which was in the same general vicinity up there in Seattle, Washington. So you have that. And the description of the craft, a donut shape, was different from Kenneth Arnold's sighting, which was a winged shape. It wasn't flying saucers. He described it as saucers skipping on a stone skipping on water.
Right.
And so that's where the term flying saucer came out. But Kenneth Arnold's description was like a bat wing, some kind of wing.
Right.
But that combines into this story. So Kenneth Arnold, in the annals of UFO history, has always been cited the first real sight. No, we have to back up and now take a hard look at Maury Island, which predated it by 3 or 4 days. And then to top it all off, we have Fred Crisman. And I'll get into all of the details about this later. But if we fast forward to the faked moon landings in 1969, right? If we talk about that whole thing and JFK and the JFK assassination, and we go, how is the JFK assassination tied into UFOs? Well, it's been discussed a lot, but it's not what most people think. The JFK assassination is tied into Maury Island. Right? It's like, wait a minute here. Hold on, pump the brakes. What is Jimmy actually saying? Fred Crisman, and we'll get into the details of all of this. Fred Crisman, and everybody in the chat room right now can Google Fred Crisman, go look him up, and follow him down the rabbit hole that I am launching in front of everybody. Fred Crisman has been at the center of just about every crazy conspiracy UFO thing, JFK assassination in the history of the United States. And Fred Crisman was also involved in Maury Island, and he was there. So if you follow the life of Fred Crisman over the next few decades, from 1947 all the way to 1969, 1970, Fred Crisman has been involved in everything. That guy has done more interviews with agencies. Why were you here? What were you doing? Fred Crisman has been at the center of all of it. So that's Maury Island. It is one of the most fascinating cases. And when you look at each little incident individually, which is the debris that fell on the beach, the donut-shaped UFO, the 2 eyewitnesses, the 2 dead pilots, and Fred Crisman, this story is just incredible. You'll spend weeks, if not months, looking into this, like many have, including myself. It's absolutely fascinating, Christina.
100%. And there's one book in particular that I think is a really great overview about this story. And let me find it so I don't get it wrong. And it is called The Maury Island UFO Incident, the story behind the Air Force's first plane crash. And this was published in 2014. And in this book, particularly, which I did read, it breaks down the story by each day of after the incident happened, the time frames written by Charlotte. And then the second bit of the book, written by Philip Lipson, writes more in-depth kind of bios of the characters in this story. It's a great read, and I think it thoroughly covers as many bits and pieces of the story that it possibly can.
There's another part to this case too as well, and just like any case where you've got witnesses, in this case 2 men died, 2 pilots died, debris, the sighting, the date, and you've got all this official stuff that's facts that's there. The case suddenly disappeared, and the FBI steps in and says, "Hey, it was all a hoax, and it was all made up, and that it was their way of bearing the case." At the same time, when we look at Maury Island, you have Kenneth Arnold, and then you have Roswell. And Washington, D.C. had a problem on their hands, and they didn't know what to do with Kenneth Arnold. Later, they called Maury Island a hoax, and then they go to Roswell and say that it was a crashed weather balloon. And that story has changed many times since then as well, the official government part of this. But Washington had a problem on their hands. There were sightings that were happening all over the country, people were panicking and things were being seen. And they had all of these reports coming in. And I don't think that Washington at that time knew how to deal with any of this. And the way that we have been told about UFO incidents in the past by Washington, D.C., is what they learned on how to squash this stuff back in 1947. They had these three big cases that happened right back to back to back. And by the time Roswell came around, they figured out a way to get it all silenced. And it's their method of operation since then. And we've seen it over and over again. And it started with Maury Island, continued with Kenneth Arnold, and then, of course, with Roswell. And that's the importance of Maury Island when you look at UFO history and you're investigating all of this. One of the most interesting parts is how Washington, D.C., the military, the White House, and the press started to deal with this right after Roswell in 1947. The Air Force was created. The CIA was created, and the ability to control the press started with the CIA. And that's what we're dealing with today. And that's why you need to start with Maury Island, look at this, look at all the players that are involved with it, and then you can see the roadmap of how Washington dealt with these big cases in the future.
Well, it is claimed to be that the Maury incident was kind of the very first modern UFO story that came out, because it came out 2 weeks before Roswell and 3 days before Kenneth Arnold's story about seeing flying saucers. And I think that is very important to mention, is just how all of these things just kind of happened at once, just back to back to back.
The other part about Fred Crisman, who again is at the center of Maury Island, need to make this very, very clear. Fred Crisman is a character in the Oliver Stone film JFK, right? And Fred Crisman is there. Go and watch the movie. And here we're talking about Maury Island today and UFOs and this amazing incident that happened. And this character, Fred Crisman, go watch Oliver Stone's JFK. You're going to hear his name and you're going to go, oh, wow. And once again, I need to emphasize this. Hang on for a second. Texter coming in. When you look at Fred Crisman and then you see how not only, when I say it's just about every conspiracy story that we have, Fred Crisman was at the center of it. But when you're dealing with Fred Crisman, he also tells another story about in World War II. We're going to get back to Maury Island in a second. Fred Crisman was a pilot, and he tells this story. He was in, I want to say like Burma. He was somewhere in the Pacific fighting in World War II, gets shot down. And him, and I think it was his co-pilot, they parachute out, they land on this island, and they end up in a cave fighting creatures from the inner earth. They get in a shootout and they blast their way out of the cave. They get rescued and they're scarred, they're cut up, they're bleeding, and they tell the story of how they were in this cave fighting monsters, creatures from the inner earth. And this all of the Shaver inner earth stories that came out in different magazines and on radio, some on television throughout the 50s. Fred Crisman is there telling his story about fighting creatures from the inner earth during World War II when his plane was shot down. And here's Fred Crisman officially part of the Maury Island case. Fred Crisman's a very, very interesting guy.
I want to ask you before we but before I do ask you, I want to say thank you so much to Exofa. Currently having 4 cats and 2 rabbits on my lap. So sorry if I'm not talkative today. Loving the show as always, Christina. Thank you so much. And you've been talking a little bit about Chrisman. Can you go into a little bit of depth of his connection with the Maury incident?
Well, if there is my good friend Peter Lavenda, many years ago, and I hope somebody can find the link for this and put it up in the chat so everybody else can go and see this. Many years ago, this video presentation showed up on YouTube by Peter Lavenda called "The Secret Space Program." It was shot. He spoke in Amsterdam, and a big crowd. And so Peter Lavenda, very unique guy, very educated, very smart, great writer. Love all of his books. And of course, he's now working with Tom DeLonge over at TTSA, and he's been writing the Secret Machines books with Tom DeLonge. All right. So, but before all of this happened, it's probably 15 years ago, maybe longer. Peter gives this presentation on the secret space program, and Peter talks about growing up in New York, like in Queens or in Bronx, and on this street there was this church, and he gets involved in this church. And now, not to go off on this story from Peter Lavenda because it's very complex, but Peter found himself in the middle of, and this is in the early 70s, of this mess. All right. So, and as he's moving along, he's a kid. Fred Crisman comes into his life. And so he says, who is Fred Crisman and how is, and he goes, I am going to tie the JFK assassination back to the Maury Island UFO incident and this trail of Fred Crisman across the country. And in this presentation by Peter Lavenda, he gives a complete account of Maury Island and Fred Crisman's place in this. So if you want all of the details about Fred Crisman, go and watch the Peter Lavenda Secret Space Program presentation that was done in Amsterdam. So Crisman, and this is all from memory, everybody. So as this incident starts to unfold, and now they've got to move the debris from Seattle down to Los Angeles. Now, this is the other point that needs to be stressed with everybody. Seattle is where Kenneth Arnold has his sighting. Seattle was a big military hub, and still is, for the Western United States. There's a lot of stuff that is going on up there. There's radar installations, Air Force bases, naval yards, naval construction, all the way up to the border of Canada. And so there was things going on. And at that time, we just ended World War II with Japan, but the west coast of the United States was constantly monitored. We were always looking for things. We were looking for things in the skies. We were looking for invasions coming in from Japan. And that includes Seattle and Portland and San Francisco, Los Angeles and San Diego. So Seattle was in the middle of all of this when the sightings happened. Not only at Maury Island, but with Kenneth Arnold, America was still on alert. We were still fresh off of World War II. And now this sighting happens, and the Air Force wasn't created yet. This was the Army. They go up and they are told to collect this debris, this metallic debris that fell down on the shores of Maury Island, and get it on this plane and get it down to Los Angeles so we can study this. Now, as far as I'm concerned, all of this is fact. All of this is is in the public domain. You can go and research all of this. They load the debris on the plane. Fred Crisman and wasn't there. Fred Crisman was sent in to investigate. So the plane takes off and crashes. The B-25 literally crashes with this debris on board. This is where, and Fred Crisman goes in and does the investigation. This is what is so bizarre, I think, with everybody, Christina.
Oh, yeah.
Is that once again, everything is silenced. Once again, now the debris lost. Now the plane has crashed. Now the pilots who were witnesses to all of this and the debris, they are now deceased. And it's a situation where the trail, in a strange way, goes cold at that point. What happened to the debris? What was it? Was that recovered? Was it ever studied? Did the debris ever make it onto the plane? Maybe it didn't. Maybe all of this is a ruse. We don't know. It's a fascinating part of this entire story.
It absolutely is. And I think a big part of the story that grabs a lot of people's attention. John has a question, and it's so good to see you, John. It says, Christina, do you think, as Frank Milbourne said last night, that some are showing malicious intent, or do you think sometimes they unintentionally injure or kill humans, or probably both? Combo of future humans, aliens, jinn, poltergeists.
That question is for you.
Well, I haven't heard Frank Milbourne say that last night. I didn't hear about it. But as for, I mean, the whole question, I'm really not too sure. And we have to try to put their actions in a human thought frame when it comes to things like this. So I'm not, Jimmy, what do you think?
Yeah. What?
Well,
I don't. This is my honest opinion, and I keep going back to this, John, and I appreciate this. I think that we're all a little bit paranoid about the possibilities of dealing with something more intelligent than us that could have technical capabilities to just wipe us out. And when we all watch the movies, and somehow, the alien invasion happens, and you have groups of humans that are now living in the forest, and they're putting together these rudimentary guns and these things, and they go out, and we just, as a human species, we battle the alien technology with these simple things, and we're able to go and conquer them and do this with our simple selves. Okay, but that's the big fear. I haven't seen any evidence of anything bad happening. I just haven't. If somebody has an incident where another human is shot and killed and maimed by an ET race here on Earth, let me know. And then we have something to be worried about. I think it's the opposite. If we haven't heard anything, we haven't seen anything bad happen, why, it's good to be cautious, but I don't think we should be scared. If somebody wanted to cause us problems, we would know it. I mean, we would know. We'd already see it.
Well, there is the Colares, Brazil incident, but I suspect that there
yes, there's
maybe
that. There's that.
Probably one of the most famous ones, but I suspect that there are more than one civilization involved, but who really knows what their intents are? I believe that we could have been wiped out many times over already. And some of the negative aspects about abductions, again, how can we step into their shoes to understand their intents and thoughts?
Hold on for a second. I've got a really good Khalid. Khalid says, aliens killed me with boredom. That's actually pretty funny. if we go, uh, uh, did everybody check out? I want to stay on Maury Island and this character Fred Crisman, but let's go sideways a little bit. I posted the video of Bill Nelson of NASA that was recorded by the University of Virginia on October 19th. It was published on October 20th on the U of V, University of Virginia YouTube channel. You can go and check it out. Go to University of Virginia. You'll see it right there. Bill Nelson, NASA, and he speaks. Now, he talks for about an hour, and it's a great interview. And he's talking about Mars and exploration and the future of space and cooperation with Russia and China and the space race that's going on and the future of the ISS. And, a very cool search for exoplanets. And then the last 10 minutes of this, Christina, have you seen, did you see what I posted?
About Bill Nelson?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, you saw it. The last 10 minutes of that video, the professor there at the University of Virginia says, "Hey, Bill, ETs, UAPs, what's going on with that?" And what Bill Nelson said was one of the most extraordinary statements I think I've ever heard coming from NASA's and JPL, civilian space agency. Yeah, right, whatever. But it's the closest I've heard to an official government statement about these subjects. But and this is going back to John's question. He said, how is it possible to even think that we are alone in this universe and in our Milky Way, where we've got, hundreds and hundreds of billions of planets and things, and our pilots are seeing things, doing these extraordinary movements and defying physics in front of us without wings, without propulsion, without any means of propulsion or anything like that. He said, so there's something going on. And he brings up us being civilized, right? Okay. And that we can't be the only civilized species and civilization in the universe. But he also brings up intelligence. And intelligence seems to be visiting our planet. And he's acknowledged all of that. He never brought up hostile intent. He didn't bring up a big negative thing about any of this. And I thought that was very, very telling. And I want to express to everybody that I haven't seen or heard of anything negative. Is there going to be this big space war? It would have already happened. We would see it going on right now. I just don't see it. I don't see it. Go and listen to Bill Nelson's own words about what may be visiting us right now and their interest in it. But nobody's throwing up red flags right now, and I don't think that there's a reason to be concerned. I think we should be happy. Do we need to be going out and holding up signs? Welcome, space brothers. Take me to your leader. I'm not suggesting that. But I don't see anything negative happening, Christina. I don't. I want to be very happy and positive about what is going on, and I don't want to be scared. I'm not scared, but I don't want to be scared.
No, of course not. And about Bill Nelson, I was very impressed, and I also like. Sorry. So, and I was also compelled to feel that he had more answers, and that they were like on the very tip of his tongue, and he just wasn't able to speak it out. So I look forward to what he has to say in the future if he does come out with anything else. The Unidentified Celebrity Review says, "Congratulations doing the UnX Network." Thank you so much, Louise. It's going to be really exciting. I got cool people like Jimmy and Micah and Whitley Strieber, so it is going to be very exciting. Then we have Jazz, and it says, not a question, but any attempt to interpret the motivations or intents of a potential alien intelligence that may have evolved in a completely different environment seems futile. We shouldn't anthropomorphize them. Thoughts? Sorry, I got new contacts and I have to go back to the eye doctor because they're the wrong prescription. So please forgive me. But first, I want to say thank you so much, Chaz, for supporting the show. And I absolutely agree. We can barely interpret each other's intentions and motivations as humans, let alone other species we share out this planet with. So, as an alien species, I mean, I can't even comprehend it. There's no way.
Yeah, it goes without saying. And Jazz brings up one of my favorite points that I like to talk about. And, and it is this, and it's such a general statement, but, I think this is what Jazz is trying to say, but this is my general statement. There is no way that we could understand something that was 10,000 years more advanced than us or a million years more advanced than us. And that's it. No matter what those concepts are, no matter what, what, can you say that again? We wouldn't have any idea. And if we just look at us today, how is it possible that you and I, Christina, could go back 5,000 years, 3,000 BC, and start hanging out with Stone Age man and talk to them about the concepts of life that we enjoy today?
Right.
Now, and it's not the technical stuff. It's not the money. It's not the internet. It's not television. I'm talking about the philosophical side of things, how we look at things, how we understand what the universe is, and the physics of things, and how life works, and DNA and blood and bacteria and viruses, and I mean, all of the these deep philosophical questions that stem off of all of that they wouldn't even understand. Now, they may have basic concepts of, okay, so fire is hot, it burns you. Okay, they get that. They understand that. And we could have that conversation with our ET brothers and sisters. But that's how we would relate to each other. We wouldn't have any idea. Now, talking about us, if you and I went to the future selves of us here on Earth, 5,000 years in the future, would we understand even Earthlings in 5,000 years? Would we have any concept of what they are dealing with and the things that they have advanced into, not only as spiritual beings and consciousness, but everything else? No, we wouldn't. Let alone an ET race that has evolved on another planet. I mean, how is it that we could relate? Now, there are basic things that we could discuss with each other. There's basic things, and we would have some questions that maybe they could answer, but them coming at us with their concepts and philosophy and science and life first, no, I don't think we would understand hardly any of it as advanced as we are today. So I think Jazz brings up one of the most funnest points that we can discuss, philosophically speaking, is that I don't know what we expect to learn from or discuss or to understand from an intelligent extraterrestrial civilization that would come here and visit and speak with us. I just don't think we would have a grasp. I don't.
Unless maybe they attempted to bring it to our level of understanding. Jason Fay, thank you. It says, I live in Washington and we had UFOs over the Hanford nuclear site in East Washington when they were manufacturing plutonium during World War II, even mentioned in UFOs and nukes. And that's a really good point that you make that has been brought up in this particular incident. And I want to get more into depth about the story before we bring up about the manufacturing of plutonium, because it's a kind of a side theory as to why what happened in 1947 happened.
Ask me that again.
Well, it's not a question. This is just a statement. But I'm saying that I'm happy that he brought it up because we will be discussing it a little bit later as we go more into depth about this story.
Yes. Now, here, this is directly lifted from Wikipedia, but it's pretty interesting. This is Fred Crisman's role in the Maury Island incident. In 1947, Crisman was involved in the Maury Island incident. Crisman's fellow UFO witness Harold Dahl believed the 1960s TV series The Invaders, one of the great TV series of all times, was based on Fred Crisman's life. In the January 1950 issue of Fate magazine, Crisman insisted that the incident was not a hoax. He said, "Why, if we were such blackguards and deliberately caused the deaths of 2 Air Force pilots and the loss of a $150,000 airplane, did not the government or some agency there attempt to seek justice through the courts of the state and federal government?" And again, it's Fred Crisman's role in all of this, all the way up to the JFK assassination. All of this stuff is part of the public domain, and I want to go forward. October 31st, 1968, a grand jury in New Orleans issued a subpoena for Fred Crisman in connection with the investigation into the John F. Kennedy assassination. This was in 1968. District Attorney Jim Garrison, and if you've seen the movie, you know who Jim Garrison is. That's played by Dances with Wolves. Dances with Wolves, the actor.
I don't.
I can't remember his name right now. I'm brain freezing. But that's Jim Garrison. Mr. Crisman has been engaged in undercover activity for part of the industrial warfare complex for years. His cover is that of a preacher and a person engaged to work to help gypsies. Remember what I mentioned about Peter Lavenda and the church back in the Bronx, okay? Our information indicates that in the early 1960s, he has made many trips to New Orleans and Dallas areas in connection with his undercover work for that part of the warfare industry engaged in the manufacture of what is termed in military language a hardware, meaning those weapons sold to the U.S. government, which are uniquely large and expensive. Mr. Crisman is a former employee of Boeing Aircraft Company, in the sense that one defendant in the case is a former employee of Lockheed Aircraft Company in Los Angeles. In intelligence terminology, this ordinarily means that the connection still exists, but that the former employee has moved into an underground operation. More often than not, a bad record or evidence indicated that he has been fired is prepared for the parent company to increase the disassociation between the two. Fred Crisman, right there. This was in court. This was the district attorney, Jim Garrison, speaking to the court about Mr. Fred Crisman. It is an unbelievable story.
I mean, he is definitely a character. And for the actor in Dancing with the Wolves, it is Kevin Costner.
Yeah, Kevin Costner. Kevin
Yes.
Costner. Yes.
And Inquire Within, thank you. It says, congrats on the move to an X. You both are epic and deserve all the good things going your way. Keep the epic dankness going. Thank you, Inquire.
Yeah. We got to get Lewis. I got to get Lewis over on NX. I think that'd be a good move too as well.
Heck yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about this particular incident. Other than what I had said about what Harold had seen these craft, right? And it was spewing out this very hot kind of molten metal, and it touches the ocean and the boat. The next day, he is encountered by kind of the first main story of the Men in Black.
Yes.
Right. Do you want to talk about that?
No, keep going. This is okay. When I listed everything down about Maury Island, I left out the Men in Black part of this. And if we, I want you to give us the Men in Black and White version of the Men in Black coming into this. But the description by everybody about what happened immediately after the incident, dude showing up in black suits and telling, it's the Men in Black. right? Before they were called men in black. Maybe women in black too, as well. Could be aliens in black too, as well. But continue, Christina.
Well, it seems like the Men in Black are a very consistent character, and a lot of the stories that we talk about, how they somehow show up either the next day or the next few days after the incident happened, even before the witness even talks about it publicly. However, Harold did talk about it publicly as soon as it did happen to his superior captain. So it is stated that the next day, 6:30 in the morning, a man knocks on Harold's door. His wife was still asleep. He was making coffee, doing his regular morning routine. And when the door knocks, Harold opens it and he sees a man in a black suit, states he was about medium height and wearing a hat as well. There was nothing that really struck him as abnormal about this man, at least from what he stated. And he said, the Men in Black said, I know a lot about you. I know who you are. I know what you do, this, that, and the other. Let's go out and have breakfast and tell me what happened to you yesterday. Harold, of course, was very taken aback and he's like, I don't even know who you are. How do you know all this information about me? And why would I want to have breakfast with you? But as we know from a lot of stories about the Men in Black, either all the alleged stories at least, they have a way with convincing the person that they're talking to. So they ended up going to this kind of like cafe, and Harold begins to tell his story of exactly what happened, at least what he said to the man, allegedly. And the Man in Black says, okay, thank you for telling me this information. Now you are not allowed to talk about this. This shouldn't have happened to you to begin with. And if anything, it didn't happen. If you do publicly speak about this, bad things will happen to you. Harold didn't really take this to heart. He was like, yeah, whatever. I'm just going to go ahead and tell my story anyway, because I don't know who this guy is, just some random stranger who confirmed that he was not a part of the FBI. So he goes ahead and he keeps telling a story. Now, there are alleged accounts that as soon as that happened, bad things did happen to Harold. Now, from what I read in the book, there wasn't a lot of evidence to back it up. So these are kind of more of just theories, or I guess maybe assumptions, but it is stated that Harold's son went missing soon after. His business was vandalized. He got some kind of mysterious illness, and then of course there was a lot of public ridicule. So those were kind of the bad things that happened to him that the Men in Black did state.
Now, and taking all of this further, let's get into the details of the case. Now, of course, we mentioned Kenneth Arnold and his sighting on June 24th, and when Arnold came forward with his story, it was publicized, it was out there, and then Raymond Palmer, who was the editor of a magazine back then called Amazing Stories, which is still one of the great magazines in publishing history. But Palmer turns around and contacts Arnold and says, hey, there's this incident that happened up near you in Seattle with these two harbor patrolman guys. And can you go out there and interview them about the UFO that they saw 3 days before your sighting? And Arnold says, sure, this is Kenneth Arnold. So Palmer, I could have the facts of this, a little bit skewed, but that's okay. Palmer gives him some cash, floats him a couple of $100 and to fund this investigation.
Quotation marks.
And so, yeah. And so Kenneth Arnold goes and he chases down Dahl and he interviews him. And Dahl then says to Kenneth Arnold, and all of this is for Amazing Stories magazine, he says to Kenneth Arnold, he said that his boss, Fred Crisman, right? It's just like, here we go. Fred Crisman investigated all of this, man. And not only that, this dude in a black suit showed up at my house, told me not to talk about the incident, and he says, but we recovered debris, and it was light colored metal. It was thousands of pieces fell down out of the sky like falling newspapers, is how he described it. And we gathered everything. He's telling Kenneth Arnold all of this. And the military showed up and they collected everything, and they've got the debris from the flying saucer that was shaped like a donut. This was all relayed directly to Kenneth Arnold after Kenneth Arnold reported his incident. And do you see how interesting all of this gets and how it's all played out? And there you go. Fred Crisman is just launched into the middle of this. Fred Crisman didn't place himself at the scene. He didn't, right? This wasn't later that this thing evolved. Fred Crisman was there front and center with Dahl. He investigated the incident. Men in Black showed up. Kenneth Arnold with his side. At Maury Island, when you go and start to unravel this, is one of the most fascinating cases. And you can't really deduce anything else except for incident happened. There was a sighting. There was multiple crafts. One of the crafts had issues, crashed, exploded in the air. The debris fell down. Debris was collected by the military, put on a B-25. The B-25 is flying to Los Angeles, takes off in Seattle, crashes. Pilots died. Debris is missing, and Men in Black showed up. And it's like the craziest. Oh man, I love Maury Island. It's an amazing, fascinating case. And for everybody, when I was first, and this is the truth, when many years ago, and I'm investigating and researching UFOs and cases. And as you do this, and you find a case that you're fascinated with, and then you find the names, and then you see these names are repeated, and you just kind of back up, and then it takes you to another case, Eventually, you wind up on Maury Island. And Maury Island, for most people, is a case that they've never heard anything about. UFO researchers, we know about Maury Island. It's kind of like Shag Harbor. Shag Harbor is another case. Yeah, Shag Harbor is another case that people don't mention in the first. When people go, oh, Rendlesham and Roswell and Kecksburg, and Travis Walton, and they don't mention Maury Island, and they don't mention Shag Harbor, and they should. But as you go and you research all of this stuff, you find out about Maury Island, and you're scratching your head, never heard of this case. And then you realize how important it is, and how it influenced a chain of events across this country for 2 or 3 decades. It's fascinating.
Oh, yeah. And it's also classified as like the event before Roswell, because Roswell is such a staple in the UFO world that you have to place things around it just to make sense of it.
Well, I would suggest to anybody, and if you're taking notes here, do this. Yes, it is Maury Island. Yes, it is Kenneth Arnold, and yes, it is Roswell. But there were other things that were happening at the same time, virtually the same week. And that takes you straight to Phoenix, Arizona, and the Rhodes photographs. And Christina, Google it right now. Rhodes UFO, Phoenix, 1947. And you take a look at those pictures. And if those aren't not only very similar to what Kenneth Arnold described seeing up in Tacoma, those images, this happened at the same time. This is all July 1947, July 1947. It was crazy town in this country. So it wasn't just Roswell. And now those photographs with Rhodes, and this is what I'm saying to all of the UFO researchers out there, go and look at all of these cases. Look at the dates, look at the times, look at the locations. Look at that photograph right there. That was taken in 1947 in the skies of Phoenix, Arizona, not New Mexico, and not Seattle, Washington, not Mount Rainier, not Maury Island, not Kenneth Arnold. This was an independent incident that happened at the same time that all of these other incidents are happening. And dare I say, with Maury Island, remember the donut description?
Right?
What do you see in the middle of that craft?
Ooh, a donut.
You
Go
see a
back to it.
hole. You see a
You
hole,
see a
right?
hole
You
right
see a
in the
hole.
center. Could definitely be another kind of donut-shaped craft, I guess, if you had to explain it, but with more wings.
Yes, yes, and now staying on this, this is all related. I believe that Roswell, Kenneth Arnold, Maury Island, and the Rhodes incident in Phoenix are all connected. They all happened at the same time. Now, there wasn't any craft anywhere in the world by any military that had this design to it that Rhodes shot. Now, there's many photographs. This is just one from Rhodes. But this is what happened in the Rhodes incident, which repeated Roswell, which repeated Kenneth Arnold, and also repeated the Maury Island incident. He takes these pictures. They get published in the paper. He took these pictures in his backyard. Film. What happens? Men in Black.
Dun, dun, dun.
That's right. They show up at his house. They take his camera. They take the pictures. They take the negatives. And they, the famous stuff, right? You can't talk about this. We were never here. And the stuff disappears. He didn't get those images back for 2 years. And he hounded the Air Force. He wanted his images back. And I don't even think he got the complete set of pictures. What you see there is what was published in the local Phoenix newspaper at the time. I could be wrong. But that happened that week.
And
yeah,
it was
go ahead.
stated in one of the newspapers at the time in 1947 that there were countless UFO sightings in about 39 states just in that year alone.
That's
so
right.
like you had said, I mean, 1947 was just a hot year of people telling their stories about what they saw, but it wasn't until Kenneth Arnold came out with the term flying saucer where people better to identify or at least to classify what they were seeing and give it a name. And when it comes to Kenneth Arnold and this story in particular, it seems like, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like with this story, he's kind of a part of it due to just association of seeing his sighting a few days after this, plus having more of a credible background. But do you agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, and I agree. And here's the rub. All right. I'm not talking about the science fiction movies. I'm not talking about Fate magazine. I'm not talking about Amazing Stories. I'm not even talking about the Twilight Zone. I'm not talking about any of that. Nuclear Women from Mars, all these movies that came out in the 1950s. I'm not talking about any of that. The government stepped in and squashed all of this. The only reason why Kenneth Arnold continued, well, Kenneth Arnold was the first, and Kenneth Arnold went public. So they had an individual right there that couldn't be controlled, couldn't be silenced. But that was just one guy. Everything else was squashed. And before you say, Jimmy, you can't keep a secret, that well. They did. I am a student of ufology. I have studied every case. I have been on top of this since I was a kid. When I was a kid, there was no Roswell. It didn't exist. It didn't exist. And when everything blew up, going back to Charles Berlitz's book and Bill Moore's book, Roswell, when that came out, and Jesse Marcel and the interviews that were done along with Stanton Friedman. Back then, everybody went back and said, we don't know what you're talking about. They had to go back and dig up these newspapers that were released on July 6th and 7th, the Roswell Daily Record, that also was all the way across the United States on the wire services. But on July 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th, all the way through for the next 5 decades, silence. Roswell didn't happen. Didn't happen. So I went back as a student of this and also of broadcasting. I need to be very clear with everybody listening to me right now. There are radio shows and television shows that you can go and documentaries that you can go and listen to that were recorded, filmed, and broadcast in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. Go and listen to any of them. Not one mentions Roswell. You can go back and listen to Long John Nebel. That's Nebel, Long John Nebel. He had a radio show overnight, late night UFO paranormal show out of New York on WOR that ran for about 25, 30 years. And it was an all-night show. Who was his main guest that he had on for 20 years? Kenneth Arnold. Kenneth Arnold on that show. And they have 5 or 6 guests, and they're sitting around for 5 or 6 hours. Go and listen to these broadcasts. They are amazing to listen to. And they talk about Nazi UFOs. They talk about technology. They talk about flying saucers being constructed in the United States and different companies developing technology. Talk about all of this. Talk about all of the sightings. They talk about them. Nobody in all of those broadcasts for 20 years mentioned Roswell. It doesn't exist. Now, Kenneth Arnold, who had his sighting on June 24th, 1947, Roswell happened a week later. It was in the newspapers. Kenneth Arnold didn't remember it. Kenneth Arnold didn't talk about it, and neither did anybody else. And all of the military researchers that were out, that were writing books at the time, UFOs Above and Beyond, go and watch that documentary that was made, narrated by Rod Serling. Great document. Doesn't mention Roswell. Doesn't. It's got every UFO incident in the world. Doesn't mention Roswell. The government effectively squashed that case, and they took it out. If it wasn't for Jesse Marcel coming forward and speaking about it, Roswell would have stayed hidden, would have stayed buried. We were, this, like I said, this connects directly back to Maury Island. That case was squashed and called a hoax, just like Roswell was. And push all of this forward to a week later, Rhodes is shooting these photographs in Phoenix, and it made it into the Phoenix newspaper. Story squashed. And so from 1947 forward, they had control of the narrative. So today we have, and I know I'm on the soapbox right now, but for those out there that are looking into UFO history, I'm helping you out. Go and follow this timeline and go and check it out. Look for anybody to mention Roswell between 1947 and 1980. Try to find it. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. It does not exist. It's unbelievable.
Does that till? Thank you so much. It says unrelated, but what do you guys think about the Dulce alien attack? And I'll say, I haven't looked too much into it, but it's something that I'm definitely considering for a future episode about the mystery of the Dulce area, the sightings by local Native Americans, and the supposed base in the Archuleta Mesa, all the tales. So with that, I mean, I'm definitely thinking about it for doing it as a future episode.
Yeah,
I think it'll be really cool.
Yeah. We can discuss. It's a fascinating story. And staying with that for a second, I don't want to go too far into Dulce, but Bill Moore, Rick Doty, Benowitz, the entire story that we've already covered, and others revolve around Dulce. And there were, you know what? Let's cover that in the future. There's some other moving parts to this. I think that there are a couple of murders that happened around this. There was definitely a suicide that happened around this, and there was people being put in mental hospitals, and lots of accusations and a lot of disinformation that was spread around about individuals and the UFO phenomenon in general. And of course, you have Kirkland Air Force Base, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Dulce, all happening at the same time. It's an unbelievably fascinating and tragic story, all at the same time.
It is. It definitely is. And I have another question, and it's by John. Thank you so much. And it says, speaking of earlier events, there's been more talk lately of the 1933 Italian UFO. Do you think we might ever get official admission of the very early ones, including even earlier? Didn't US take it after World War II and 1897 Texas UFO? What I'm going to leave this one to you, Jimmy.
Well, and John brings up a really good point. There are, we have, what we would call the modern stuff, where we've got witnesses that are still alive, like Travis Walton or John Burroughs, and we can go and talk to them about specific, Calvin Parker, and they're still around, and we can. So I always consider, even though Rendlesham was 40 years ago, it's 40 years ago.
Yeah.
At 20 years before your birthday, right? I mean, right? But I consider Rendlesham a modern case. I consider Travis Walton modern. I consider Calvin Parker modern. But if we back up to 1897 in Texas, 1933 in Italy, I think he had a third date there too as well. When we look at those cases, those are still modern too, because the 1897 case in Texas was documented. It was reported on in the newspapers. There were witnesses. There were statements from witnesses in the town saying that they took the alien being and gave him a proper burial. Right?
I heard that.
Yes. So this is documented. And now, would there be an admission? The admission would come from the townsfolk in Texas. The 1933 Italian incident. Again, I don't think that there was a whole lot of government interference into this in 1933. And what would there be to admit? What we do have from those cases is reports in the local media and the witnesses in the local media that spoke about these events, and it's there. It's documented. And do we accept that as fact? Well, it's as close as we've got. It's getting 1933, right? It's almost 100 years ago. So there are no witnesses left, and would there be, especially in Italy after World War II, is there a whole lot of documentation that will be left over? I don't know, but I don't know if we could get the government to admit to things like that. But we definitely have the supporting evidence that was done in the local media that if the big reveal happens with disclosure and it keeps going like it is now, then we can look back at those cases again and go, well, what was going on here? If this is going on today, let's take a look at that. And maybe ET was visiting back then.
Well, we have quite a few other things to cover and more, but we'll be right back after this short break.
Hi, I'm Micah Hanks, and let me tell you something. I support Cristina Gomez as a Patreon subscriber, and here's why you should too. She brings all of her unique insights to a whole new generation, and all while she's also going through college. Listen, support Cristina, become a Patreon subscriber today. You won't regret it.
Now, I want to talk about a little about the actual plane that crashed. So, it was stated in the Kelowna Tribune newspaper in 1947, and it said, the close guard which Army officers established around the crash scene and their refusal to permit any pictures to be taken of the wreckage added to the belief that the plane was carrying secret cargo. Um, with that, with when people were trying to talk to the government about this exact case, it was stated that they weren't carrying anything special, and that the the way that the airplane crashed was some kind of internal fire. However, this plane had been checked 2 weeks prior to make sure that the plane was running smoothly, and it had just also gotten new engines as well. So there was no real reason for the airplane to have crashed in the way that it did. And then when the newspaper wrote this, it just led to a lot more suspicion, and I guess possibly conspiracy, into thinking that maybe this plane was carrying something that was possibly valuable, or maybe even something that could have caused the fire inside of the plane.
You said it right there. You said it right there. And could all of that be part of the cover up? You know, that type of story that they were everything was secret back then. Everything
Still
was
is.
secret. Yeah, and this country, loose lip sink ships. Okay, that term came from people that are out there talking about our ships going over to Europe during World War II, or out in the Pacific Ocean during World War II with people on. You start talking about it, the enemy's going to find out, and they're going to go and sink those ships. So don't yap about anything, and that's where that term came from. And it was, especially after the trauma after World War II, that kind of mindset continued. When we went into the Cold War after that, and Russia being the Soviet Union being the big enemy, and of course, China soon after that, secrecy was everything. And communism and the hysteria that was going on in this country and around the world about all of this, people just kept their mouths shut. And there was always this, there was always this underlying thing that it was okay for the government to have secrets. And so with this B-25, if it had UFO debris on it, smoke and mirrors, right? You want to shut everybody up? Well, it wasn't really UFO debris. It was secret cargo, right? That's it.
Right.
Story's done. Nobody's going to touch that. Nobody's going to touch it. I wanted to read this to everybody. So Kenneth Arnold first recruited Captain E.J. Smith of United Airlines, who had reported witnessing a flying disc on July 4th. Crisman, infamous Fred Crisman, showed white metal debris to Arnold and Smith, who interpreted it as mundane and inconsistent with Dahl's description. Arnold then decided to contact Lieutenant Frank Brown of Military Intelligence, 4th Air Force, Hamilton Field, California. Brown arrived at Arnold's hotel in Tacoma along with Captain William L. Davidson. We're talking about the military is all over this Maury Island case. And if it was a hoax and it didn't happen, a B-25 is flown up there and loaded up with debris if nothing happened, if it was a hoax. Davidson and Brown conducted interviews, collected fragments, and prepared to return flight out of McCord Air Force Base in the Army Air Force Base. In the early hours of August 1st, the two officers died when the B-25 bomber they were piloting crashed outside of Kelso, Washington, on their way back to California. The FBI then proceeded to investigate this case and concluded that Crisman and Dahl's sightings were a hoax. That's what you do. You shut it down. Okay?
Yeah.
In their files, they noted that Dahl stated that if questioned by authorities, he was going to say it was a hoax because he did not want any further trouble over the matter. The files also detail a few alternate stories communicated by Crisman and Dahl to local newspapers and other media outlets, and concluded that they had contacted a variety of publications in the hope of building up their story through publicity to the point where they could make a profitable deal with Fantasy Magazine out of Chicago, Illinois. An FBI report concluded that Tacoma Harbor Patrol was the name of a privately owned for-profit business enterprise seeking to charge owners of vacation homes on the island for keeping an eye out on their properties during the owner's absence. There you go. It's Maury Island. The incident actually happened. It was real.
And with that, going back to the crash, there were about 300 military officials that searched the area and to where the airplane crashed, but hope maybe to grab any debris that still survived. Mr. McDonald, thank you so much. It says, "Congrats, Christina. You've worked hard for this. Well done. Thank you. Thank you so much." Another thing that I want to talk about is some kind of like before we even get that, she talked about hoax, okay, and I want to touch on that. So Harold was telling the story that it was completely true. After a certain period of time, he came out and said it was a hoax. He comes out and he says, "I've been lying to you guys the whole time. This whole story is completely untrue." And it was stated allegedly that he would much rather be classified as a liar than be in consistent ridicule. And we noticed the same trend with Jesse Marcel from Roswell. He said it was true, then said it was a hoax, then said it was true again. And it seems like this might be a reoccurring theme for those that maybe encounter military officials that are threatening them, or maybe the men in black, or maybe they simply just don't want that kind of attention anymore. But with that, it just really does seem like a reoccurring theme throughout these stories.
It's difficult for most people, whether you're civilian or in the military or law enforcement or pilot. It's very difficult for people to endure the aftermath of speaking about something UFO related, a sighting, an incident, contact, abduction, whatever it may be. It is, I don't think anybody is prepared enough for what happens afterwards. I can tell you, not through my own personal experiences of what I've had to deal with, but so many other witnesses. And if you think about what somebody like Travis Walton has endured for 40 plus years, and it continues to deal with it to this day, it's difficult, and most people can't handle it. After they come out and after they speak about it and they start dealing with the outside pressures, it's kind of like the last time you hear from them. And they back up. I don't need this. I'm just going to go and live my life. Another perfect example, somebody that's very vocal about this is Lou Elizondo. And I don't even think Lou, as strong of an individual as he is, I don't think he was prepared. I don't think he was prepared for the pressure that came down on him personally, the attacks that came down on him, but also onto his family and what they've had to endure through this. You're just not prepared. And once this starts to happen, I think a lot of people just step back and they make a choice. And that is, you know what? I don't want to deal with this anymore. I made it up. I'd rather say I made it up than deal with all of this other stuff. And it's a real incident and it really happened, but they're okay. They just don't, people are not prepared to deal with the stuff that happens and what comes down. You have a whole lot of supporters, but the one or two or three skeptics or trolls or whoever's going to come out and cause problems in your life, it gets personal, it gets ugly, and most of us never deal with that ever, not once in your life, and when it does happen, you're not prepared for it. I made a choice And I've spoken publicly about some incidents that have happened in my life. And I thought to myself, you know what? I'm coming out of the closet. I'm just going to deal with this, and I'll take whatever happens. I don't care. And I've always felt that the other people that are considered experiencers or abductees, Christina, that they need to know, and they need to hear, and they need to see somebody like me out there not giving a crap about what other people think. And I'm going to go out and I'm going to speak about this. I'm going to speak about my personal stuff. And if there was somebody around me that was there, then they can go, look, church is talking about it. This really happened. I do it for them. I don't do it for me. And that's where I'm at. And you go back and Dahl's statement here and so many others just like Dahl did exactly this. And that includes, go back to the Brazel Ranch, go back to Roswell. Look at that backpedal that ended up happening there. And, nothing to see here. And I'm talking about the very beginning of the case in July of 1947. But anyway, I digress. Continue.
Well, Incognito Man says, Christina, have you ever been told to back off a story? And I just want to say, no, I haven't. I'm just one of so many people asking questions and learning and wanting to find out more and sharing what I learned with you guys. Because for those that are new to this series, I learn with you. I spend hours upon research, and then we learn together. So I'm not really a threat to anyone, at least, I hope not. I definitely hope not. And then we have another super chat by Tammy. Thank you. It says, congratulations, Christina, on joining Unex Network. Tell Jimmy perhaps his shoe is just trying to find its soulmate. That's funny, because talking about your Twitter post and how your shoes were falling off the rack.
Man, it's still, I think I've solved the mystery, but I got to tell you. Well,
tell me.
When I I've got, I don't know, a shoe rack. It's like 15 feet wide, right? It's pretty big. And all the shoes are all stacked up. They're nice and neat now, and they're all, and I like to kick back and go, wow, those look pretty good. And so, and there, anyway, so that first moment when I walked, and I had stuff to do, and I had a laundry basket. I do laundry, folks. I do. I fold my own. I fold my stuff nice and neat. And I got my laundry basket, and I walk into the walk-in closet, and the shoes have fallen down. And I was like, I freaked. I mean, seriously. It was so out of place. And I put the laundry basket down and I looked and I went, what? And I freaked. I'm going to be straight with you. I freaked. I put the shoes back up, and I'm like, okay. And I put the laundry away and I'm out, I'm doing stuff. And a couple hours later, another laundry basket, whatever. And I walked back in and then they fell down again. And that's when I went, and I said it out loud. I've got a ghost. And I was like, okay, this is cool. I'm kind of laughing, a little nervous, but I'm letting the ghost know that you're not affecting me, bro. And I put the shoes back. It was like a couple hours. I'm taking video. I'm shooting video. I'm taking pictures of all of this. Come back a couple hours later, they fell down again. Now, this went on all night, all weekend long, and I started experimenting, and I unboxed some more shoes, right? I've got those, and so I'm putting those on the shoe racks, and I step back, and I'm like, man, those look really nice. Step out, come back in, and those shoes fell down. Only on that one rack, too. It's everything down on this side, it has been fine. It's this, I don't know. But I think I have deduced that it has been 2, now 3, because a third pair of shoes is now falling down. So it's 3 pairs of shoes. Yeah. First it was 2, now it's 3. All Adidas. All right, these are all Adidas. Yes, I collect Adidas, and I've got a lot of. These are Adidas. The other stuff, Doc Martens, they're not falling down. The dress shoes, they're not falling down. There's 20 pairs of Adidas that aren't falling down. It's just these 3 pairs. It's crazy. It's fun though. It's fun. Perfect timing for Halloween.
Heck yeah, you can never go wrong with a good ghost story. As Khalid says, Adidas ghosts are athletic.
Yes.
Speak.
So I just went up. This is right before showtime. So the two shoes, the 2 culprits are black pairs of shoes. All right, they're black, and I just put up. It's hard to explain. They're the limited edition world shoe, right? So they're white Adidas with multicolored stripes on them. So I popped those up and fell down. One did, and not just falling down. They're like a couple of feet away. I mean, so I'm going to set up cameras. I'm going to put cameras on tripods. I've got plenty of cameras. I've got my GoPro. I've got a couple of Sony video cameras. I've got plenty of tripods. I'm going to get everything charged up, memory cards. I'm going to watch these shoes fall. I want to see how they come down, what is doing this, and then how they do the dance across the floor. I'm gonna capture it all. And who knows? Maybe they're walking. Maybe they're walking across, a little.
They probably really just want to have your shoes and wear them all the time. But Smig Bush, thank you so much. It says, "Hi Christina and Jimmy. Are either of you familiar with the Command Sergeant Major Robert O. Dean? He had some dynamic theories on this topic. Much love." And I am familiar with the late Bob Dean's work, claims, and research. And he is included in a video I made giving honor to those UFO pioneers who have passed away. So just scroll down through the video library and you'll see that because he's done some great work. Jimmy, what about you?
Bob Dean was the man. I love Bob Dean. I love Bob Dean. He did this for so long. There's so much material out there. And he's just fascinating. We don't have the time to get into too much of his stuff, but he was fascinating. There was a lot of characters back then. I say characters in a kind way. A lot of personalities that I was just blown away by. And I used to get, there was this thing called, back in the day, you wouldn't know about it. It's called videotape. And we had these things called video players. And you put them in the videotapes and you would hit play and then it would play video. I know, right? It was crazy.
What?
And I used to collect these videos, and I would trade videos with friends in the 80s, UFO videos. And I got a couple of videos of Bob Dean back in the day, man. And I used to watch those over and over again. And same thing, I had Stanton Friedman and many others. I don't want to waste time with this right now, but videotape and Bob Dean. It was a good time back in the 80s.
Oh man, I wish I was alive during that time. Deborah Levine, I love seeing you here and onto the Fade to Black live chat as well. And it says, "The shoe ghost is the same one that lit up Jimmy's guitar wall last Tuesday night. And I know its name." It's so funny. Deborah's the best. Well, that is it for today's show. We covered a lot today, and I will be including some government archives on the Maury Island incident and a motion to have it legislated as having actually happened. Several links in the more info below in the video window. Jimmy, who do you have tonight on your show, Fade to Black?
Wow, tonight is Halloween ghost stories, and I've got Jim Harold. Jim Harold coming on. He's the absolute best, and host of Campfire, and he's been doing this for like 15 years, He's one of the originals, one of the great voices of paranormal. Anyway, so tonight, nobody's got a collection of ghost stories like Jim Harold. And I was also going to have on Dave Schrader, but Dave is on location shooting a TV show,
Oh,
and so
cool.
he's tied up. So I was kind of bummed out because I've done Schrader every year with ghost stories, and he was tied up. But big shout out to Dave Schrader, he's the best. And so yeah, tonight Jim Harold, and what's going on tomorrow night? What the Shaw, the Loon Witch, our eighth annual Shaw the Loon Witch show, with everybody calling in, the Fadernauts, and she does these 3-card readings, and we do
Cool.
we do about 100 in 3 hours. It's crazy. So that's tomorrow night, and then Wednesday night. You're part of this Wednesday night. Race Hobbs is going to be on with me for Fader Night, and we're going to announce the UnX Network, which is premiering on Sunday night, Halloween night, on the 31st. And Christina, welcome aboard. You deserve it, and I'm very excited to not only have you part of the team, but what the NX network represents is uniting this community, and let's try to figure out what's going on. And it's not just UFOs; it's the paranormal and Bigfoot and ghost and science and all of those things, the supernatural, all of those things that we are fascinated with, and all of this is going to be on the NX network, and the list of hosts and shows that are launching with this and the premiere event is unbelievably great, and you are part of that team. So congratulations, Christina, and welcome aboard. It's going to be a wild ride.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. There are some really stellar hosts for the UnX Network, and I cannot wait what everyone's going to be producing. As for Jim Harold, I had the pleasure to be interviewed by him a few weeks back. He is such a fun guy. Yeah, and I've listened to his podcasts here and there, and he's pretty good at telling stories. But that is it for today's show. Jimmy, I want to say thank you again so much for joining me here today as being my extra special co-host for Mysteries with a History. I want to thank everyone in the live chat. I want to thank all my beautiful moderators. I want to thank all of my Patreon supporters, everyone who dropped super chats and super stickers. You guys are fantastic. And if you want to continue this discussion, bring it to my Discord server and join me and over 330 others as a topic for debate, to share knowledge, and to overall have a good time. So everyone, thank you for joining me. Thank you, as always, to literally everyone that is here. And I simply could not do it without my Patreon supporters that have stuck with me through this journey. Strange Recon, so good to see you, who is also part of the UnX network. And he's going to be bringing you really cool stuff from his boat, which is exciting. So make sure to like, subscribe, and share. And remember, keep your eyes on the skies.